All right, so we're diving into Atomic Habits, this book by James Clear that seems like everyone's talking about.
It's everywhere for a reason, for sure.
Yeah, and I know you're busy, but you're here. So clearly, you're someone who's looking to make some positive changes.
Always looking to level up, right?
Exactly. And that's what we're doing here today. We're going deeper than just a surface level summary.
Yeah, we're not just skimming the pages, we're pulling out those real aha moments, The stuff that you can actually put into practice.
That's the key, right? Because it's one thing to read about habits, but it's a whole other thing to actually integrate them into your life.
Absolutely.
And speaking of putting things into practice, it's kind of crazy how the whole idea for this book, Atomic Habits, actually came from James Clear's own life getting totally flipped upside down.
Yeah, his story's pretty wild. I mean, the guy had this brutal baseball injury in high school.
Yeah, completely shattered his face, broken nose, couldn't see straight, even had seizures. It was intense.
He was even in a coma for a while. It's crazy.
Seriously, the guy who ends up writing this whole book about tiny changes leading to huge results, he literally had to relearn how to walk.
Had to start from scratch.
It took him 8 months before he could even drive again, and he credits those small habits, the ones he built day after day, with his recovery.
It's a pretty powerful example of what's possible when you harness the power of consistency.
He even ended up becoming an academic All-American. Talk about turning things around.
It really shows you the potential, right? How small changes can lead to some pretty remarkable outcomes.
Okay, so let's unpack the foundation here.
Yeah.
What are the core principles that make Atomic Habits tick?
At its heart, the book is about leveraging the power of tiny changes.
Tiny changes.
Yeah, but applied consistently over time.
It's like that compound interest idea, but for your habits, right?
Exactly. Small actions accumulating, building on each other to create some seriously massive results down the line.
And it's kind of interesting to note, James Clear didn't just become a habit expert overnight.
Oh yeah, he definitely put in the work.
He spent years researching, experimenting, sharing his findings through his blog. His newsletter really built his expertise from the ground up.
He was out there in the trenches, figuring out what worked and what didn't.
Okay, so now he breaks down habit formation into 4 stages. Cue, craving, response, and reward. Think about our ancestors for a second.
Okay, I'm picturing a hunting and gathering trying to survive.
Exactly. They were constantly scanning their environment, looking for cues.
Like rustling leaves, animal tracks, anything that might signal.
Food, water, shelter, the basic necessities, right?
Exactly. Those were their rewards, the things they were constantly seeking out.
So that cue, like the rustling leaves, it triggered a craving, a desire for that reward.
The anticipation of a good meal, the safety of shelter.
Which then led to a response, the action they took to get it.
They'd hunt, gather, build whatever it took.
And finally, they'd get that reward, the thing they were craving.
And that satisfaction, that feeling of getting what you're after, that reinforces the whole cycle.
It's like a feedback loop.
A complete cycle, and here's the key takeaway. Every habit, whether it's good or bad, it has to go through these 4 stages.
So if you want to build a good habit, you got to make sure all 4 stages are working in your favor.
Absolutely. And the flip side is true, too. If you want to break a bad habit, you can disrupt any one of these stages to break the cycle.
That makes a ton of sense. So we've got this foundation now, this understanding of how habits work. But one of the things that really struck me in Atomic Habits was this emphasis on identity.
Yeah, it's not just about changing your actions. It's about changing who you believe you are.
Clear says it's not about achieving goals. It's about becoming the kind of person who achieves those goals naturally.
He challenges that whole, I'll be happy when I achieve X mentality, right?
Totally. It's like instead of saying, I want to lose weight, you shift your focus to, I'm a healthy person who makes healthy choices.
Exactly. It's about aligning your actions with the identity you want to embody.
And he uses this awesome example of Laszlo Polgar, the guy who raised his daughters to be chess prodigies.
Oh yeah, that story is wild. He basically engineered their entire lives around chess.
Their environment was all about chess, homeschooled, surrounded by chess books, images of famous players, constantly playing and competing.
It wasn't just a hobby, it was their whole world.
So they weren't forcing themselves to practice, they were simply acting like the type of people they believed they were, chess players.
It was ingrained in their identity.
And every small win, every tiny breakthrough, it just added to the evidence for that identity, making it easier to stick with those habits.
The more you act in alignment with a certain identity, the more that identity becomes solidified in your mind.
Okay, so we're starting to see how this all ties together. Habits are cyclical, identity shapes our actions, and this brings us to another crucial piece of the puzzle: the environment.